Alright guys, today we're going to hit some arms. I want to thank TrueFit and Alfred for letting us in. I'm not going to do anything really complicated. Biceps and triceps, they're smaller muscles. I think a lot of people will get a little too complicated with them. We're going to do some simple movements. And we just kind of go through some basic science and techniques. Hopefully you can pick up a thing or two. So the goal for biceps, our biceps are like this long. So whenever we do curl, the goal is to make the bicep as small as possible. So if you notice down here, the bicep is this length, and as we come up, the bicep gets shorter and shorter and shorter. One mistake that I can tell you individuals do a lot when they first do these is they don't go low enough and get that full extension of the bicep, and then whenever they come up so high that once again, we're on our bone structure here. So we want to stop a little bit before our elbows turn 90 degrees to the forearm. So just make sure you touch your thighs barely, and then you come up right before you hit this point right up here. Biceps, everybody does this. I see it a lot, especially guys. We want to get the big arms. So biceps are a small muscle. We don't need a whole lot of weight to really get a good pump. So one sign that we have too much weight is when we find ourselves swinging. Our elbows need to stay at our side. So if you find that you're having to do this, it means the weight's too heavy. You need to come down a little bit. What we're doing is we're actually using our front delt to help us curl the weight, and we're not really worried about shoulders today. We're worried about arms. So lightweight, but controlled weight, and you'll get a much better pump that way, much better results. Keep my rep ranges for biceps like around the 10 to 20 range. I think for myself personally, when I would do like the 6 to 10 range, I find I would get a lot of muscle hardness look, but I had a harder time putting on size on my arms. So going with more volume on arms, I found had better results. So typically why I don't use a whole bunch of weight with arms, you'll find I'm not using 110 pound barbells. 60 to 70s is just fine for me. I just finished with some straight bar curls. I'm going to go into some hammer curls with some dumbbells. Our biceps, we have two muscles. We have the inner bicep and the outer bicep. And what determines what part of the bicep we use is our grip. I can kind of show you a little bit better on the curl bar, but if you notice on the straight bar, our hands are neutral. With dumbbells, we're going to kind of rotate it to a hammer grip, so that way we hit a slightly different part of our biceps and also incorporate a little bit of forearms. It looks kind of funny when you have big arms with small forearms, so doing hammer curls is a good way to develop biceps, but also a little bit of the forearm here. Alright guys, the same thing. Watch the elbow swing. If you can, keep your elbows by your side. Follow the natural mechanics of your frame. There's some people that can comfortably curl upright. At some point, sometimes I feel like after my pump starts to get bigger, that it just kind of feels unnatural for me to curl this way. So if you notice, this last repetition, I kind of cross-bodied the motion a little bit because at this point I feel like I'm fighting my joints to kind of keep going this way. So just kind of find a balance to what's comfortable, but what also feels right too. I don't like taking a whole lot of time between sets because I feel like I lose the pump when I take longer than about 60 seconds between sets. So one way for me to train smart is by taking less time between sets, so I have to use less weight whenever I hit the actual exercise. So I think like 40 pounds is the heaviest I'm going to go on these today. So I'm about to drop some knowledge on the curl bar for y'all. We just did or started off with straight bar curls. Okay, like I mentioned before, the straight bar keeps our hands here in that neutral position. You notice the curl bar is curled. Now, why is that? I mentioned before we have two parts to our biceps. We have the inner and outer bicep. So if you notice, as we if I grip it here, if I curl it up, that means my palms are facing away from me. Okay, now if I grip it next over here, now my palms are facing towards each other here. So what determines what part of the bicep we emphasize has to do with our palm grip. When we palm out like that, we tend to hit a lot of this outer bicep. And that's where I think a lot of people miss, because we do a lot of these curls like this and hit the inner bicep a lot. But if you simply rotate a wider grip and come up, you hit this outer bicep. And this outer bicep, I think, helps create a little bit more of that peak in the bicep, as opposed to this one, creates more of the size of the bicep here. So it's definitely important to do both. So we're gonna do a little bit of curl bar because we did a lot of in movement, but now we're gonna try and do some outer palm movement here. Alright guys, so we just finished up with biceps. Like I mentioned before, biceps are smaller muscles, so we don't need to kill them, 40, 50 minutes with 5, 6 different exercises. If you do it right, you should be able to knock out biceps in about 15 to 20 minutes. Because like I said, you take small rest periods, lighter weight, good squeezes, and the pump that way should be much better.
Set me free and give me death, there ain't no other choices. When I lay down to go to sleep, I keep on hearing voices, little whispers in my head.